Hello, everybody. Welcome to our weekly webinar series from Squibbler. My name is Moxie, and today we're going to talk about nonfiction. We're going to look at some research techniques to help you nonfiction writers. This is an introduction to collecting and organizing research. We'll be talking just for a little bit about some of the beginning ways that you can start your research and some ways to optimize your research using AI as well. So you'll learn in this webinar some valuable resources you may have forgotten or you don't know about for gathering reliable research. We'll look at some tips for conducting research, and we'll take a look at how you can use AI to keep your research organized. So there are some valuable resources that you can use when you're collecting research for your nonfiction work, and you want to make sure you have the most current and reliable research you can find. There are many ways to ensure that you are getting the material you want, and I have just a few of them here. One, you want to make sure you check the publication date. It wouldn't be appropriate to, for example, write an article about AI using something from 1990 unless you were doing a history. You want the more current material to look at. It's also important to use credible ways to access information. So I recommend Google Scholar. It's going to filter out all of the junk of the email and give you journal articles and books that are peer-reviewed, that have been edited and are reliable. You could also look at a site that's going to collect citation information for you, like Mendeley or ERIC. All of these are very reliable. You could also see your local librarian. This is their job. They're very good at finding materials for you that'll help you with your research. You might also ask if your local university library, if you can use their databases, or if they work in concert with the local public library. That's another way to get access to credible materials. So all four of those are really useful. I'm sure that a lot of you have, remember your school teachers talking about why you shouldn't use Wikipedia. There are perils involved. Not everything is fact-checked. So you got to be careful. But then the other side of this is that we all usually go to Wikipedia when we want information, at least to begin with. That doesn't mean there are not credible resources on Wiki, and I'm going to show you briefly how to access those. So here I go to Wikipedia, and I've decided to look up Jane Goodall. And you'll notice when you're looking at the write-up on Jane Goodall that there are areas with footnotes, right? You'll see here that she was a sociologist, primatologist, and anthropologist. And then you'll see the number 4. When you hover over this, it's going to give you where this information is from. So this is a primary source of information that you can look at and then go on to look at for research. So all of these footnotes are available to you, and most of them are from reliable sources, like you can see here, the National Geographic. And you can see here that there's things from the Non-Human Rights Project, which is an organization. So I encourage you to look at the primary sources on Wikipedia. If that's one place you're starting, you can still use it, just know how to use it correctly. Okay, I'm going to go back to my presentation here. Okay, so another way to make sure that you're getting useful and reliable information, you need to keep in mind that some domain names are more respected than others, especially when it comes to publishing your work and finding a respectable publisher. So some book and essay topics are maybe a little more challenging to find on these sites, but using a domain ending in .edu or .gov are more credible than using general Google search and coming up with .com domains. And the reason for that is that .coms are commercial sites. They're meant to make money, whereas edu, educational sites, and gov, government sites, are connected with educational and governmental institutions. If you are one of our writers who's working in a different country, you'll have to look for the domain names that are associated similarly to edu and government in your country, if those are also reliable there. There are some other ways to vet your sources once you've started collecting them. You want to make sure they're useful and reliable. So here are a couple of questions to ask yourself. 1, is the source peer-reviewed? In other words, has it been published and has it been vetted by other people in that field? So say, for example, I found an article that I want to use in my study on mental health and teenagers during COVID. I would probably be looking for researchers in psychology who are studying adolescents. And if they are published in a journal, that means that other psychologists, other child experts have read that article. They have edited and make sure that it's appropriate to publish. So that's one thing to look for. Is it a peer-reviewed source? Another is the source. Is it in a reliable journal or is it published by a respectable press? So generally, when you find articles that are in journals or in books that have been published by respectable presses, that means that people have gone through a lot of work to make sure that this article or this book is fact checked. So that can help you as well. Another question, as we mentioned earlier, is the source current? This does vary depending on your topic. So let's say, for example, I'm writing a book on Jack the Ripper. Of course, I'm going to look at period resources from the 19th century in England. But if I'm writing about something that's more current, let's say, study of biomechanical engineering, then I need to make sure that I'm using more up-to-date sources. If the source is a website, you can, of course, use websites, but there's something to ask yourself that's important. Is the author making his or herself public? Are they signing their name to what they're putting online? And the reason for this is there is some accountability if you're identifying who you are. If you're just writing a blog and you're not identifying your name, maybe it's kind of questionable whether or not you will stand behind the material you're posting. So that's another thing to ask yourself. So I have a couple more tips for you for conducting research. The first one is define your purpose. What is your thesis for your nonfiction book? You can write down your purpose in question form, where you're asking a question, or as a statement, whichever you like best. And these are, varying methods that we learn from when we first start to learn to write in school to when we're writing in university. You might want to keep your question or your thesis at the beginning of your document, or maybe on the side in the summary on Squibbler, so it's constantly on your mind. And you're keeping it in mind, and you're making sure that you understand your purpose and that you're staying focused. That means that as you're collecting research, if you have this question or your thesis statement next to you, you're going to make sure that you're aligning your research to your objectives, which is really important. Your book will be, organized all the way through. Another good tip for conducting research is to create an outline. And there are many ways you can do this based on what kind of researcher or learner you are. You might want to start with a broad outline of the topics that you want to cover in your book. For example, if you're writing a book on the cell and you want to talk about the little different components of the cell, like the mitochondria and so forth, you can organize that way. This is going to serve as a roadmap for your research, and it's going to help you identify the areas where you need more information. You can also use a mind map if you like visual representations. There are a lot of writers who prefer something visual they can look at. Or you can generate an outline with AI and then use it to expand on your ideas in Squibbler. So another good tip for conducting research is to use a variety of different sources. You want to diversify your research. You're not just going to the library and picking some books off the shelves like we used to have to do, back in the olden days. You can also look for academic journals with those databases I mentioned earlier, using Google Scholar or ERIC or any of those that are reliable. Look for articles, too, that you can find from reliable journals. You can conduct interviews with experts in the field and look at online databases. Different sources also provide different perspectives and insights. So you'll get more information and a variety of ways of looking at your topic. And again, I know I've mentioned this before, but make sure that your sources are up to date in circumstances where the topic is a current one. You do want to organize your notes somehow when you're conducting research. So you'll have to figure out what method is going to work for you. You can use digital folders, index cards, or a dedicated research software. Label everything clearly so you can find it later. When I'm working on large projects, I tend to divide my work up into folders, just as Squibbler does, and then put my notes into different folders that I can look at. I also prefer to create digital charts for myself. I'll show you what mine look like, and I keep everything in one place. You can also add your notes once you've gotten them to each of your folders and files in the Smart Writers summary feature, which is great because then you can look at the research that you found and incorporate it into your writing. So I'm going to show you briefly what my research looks like when I'm working on a project. This was a long formal study of writing and how students write. And you can see that I have charts with the citation of the work first because I want to make sure I don't lose it. And I'll put key ideas and methodology up here. And a lot of the times with articles, you can use the abstract to find out what the key ideas are. So that'll save you some time. The abstracts are at the beginning. I usually look at how this information I found is going to relate to my own study. And then I'll put useful quotes with page numbers or paragraph numbers so I don't lose anything. And you'll see that this one is fairly long. So that's just how I like to keep notes when I'm working. Okay. Next is you may want to keep a research journal. I have not done this, but I love this idea. You can document your research progress, including thoughts, ideas, and where you found specific information. This is going to be really helpful for tracking your progress, for not losing information, and it can be valuable later for reflection or in parts of your writing where you might experience writer's block. You'll have all of this here to think about and look at. The next tip is to verify credibility. We've already talked about this to some degree, but be sure to critically evaluate your sources, especially when you're using online content. You want to make sure it's coming from a reliable source that's credible so that it makes your work look good as well. Ensure that the information is accurate, up to date, and from reputable sources. Another tip for you is to take thorough notes. Don't just record the facts, but also your thoughts on them, potential ways that you can incorporate them into your narrative and connections to other research. You want to make sure you properly attribute any research you use. One, you look smart for finding and citing your sources. It's telling your reader, I've looked at what other people have to say about this topic, and I'm adding my voice to this conversation. And two, you won't be accused of plagiarism later should you decide to publish your work. Another tip is to organize your ideas by theme. You want to sort your research into themes or chapters according to your outline. So if you've done your outline at the beginning, you can start to organize your research there as well. This is going to make it easier to piece together information when you start writing. You have to do a little bit of work on the front end, but it's going to save you a lot of time when it comes to the writing portion of your work because everything will be organized for you. Another tip is that you can use citation management tools. There are many free citation management tools and extensions for Chrome or any browser available that can help you with your citations. So tools like Zotero, EndNote, and Mendeley can help you manage your references and citations efficiently. And this way you won't lose track of your sources. Squibbler also has a notes and research function built into the editor, so you can keep your research organized by each chapter. And what I mean by that is that we organize our work in Squibbler in folders and in files. And if you click on any separate file or folder, you can put your notes with that same file and folder. You do want to set research boundaries for yourself. Avoid the trap of endless research by setting clear boundaries on how much time you'll dedicate to each topic. This is very, very difficult to do because you're probably interested in what you're writing about, but at some point you have to stop the research and start the writing. It's very easy with research to get distracted, and then you'll end up heading down that proverbial research rabbit hole. You need to know when to move from research to writing. The first novel I wrote, I ended up doing so much research. And then when it came time to do the writing, I was sort of burned out. It wasn't very fun to do the writing. And I wish I had approached that novel differently. Okay, you might want to conduct interviews too. If applicable, interview experts or individuals related to your topic. There are a lot of people who are going to be willing to respond either in person or via email. You want to make sure you prepare well for these interviews. Make sure you spell and grammar check any emails you send out. And then if you do get an interview, make sure you record your conversations with them so you don't misquote anything, or take meticulous notes, whichever you're better at. The nice thing about a lot of interviewing people, that they're usually willing to help you find other materials for your study. People are generally pretty generous with their knowledge. You do want to fact check. That's another tip during the editing portion of your project. This is where you're going to double check your facts, your figures, and your quotes. This is crucial because it's going to maintain the integrity and accuracy of your book. It's not fun because you have to go back and make sure you've cited things correctly and that you've got the right dates and all of these things, but it's going to really make your book a lot stronger. Another good idea is to invite someone to read your work and help you with the fact checking specifically. And you can share your work through Squibbler by going to File and Share Project, or you can go to the project manager and go from List and then assign someone with Assignee. So you can just send specific sections of your work to your reader. Another tip is to use a timeline. Developing a timeline for your research, writing, and revision phases is going to make your work a lot easier. Try to stick to it as closely as possible to ensure you stay on track. The built-in project manager in Squibbler is very good for this because you can put due dates for each section that you're writing. And this will help you set and meet your goals. You can also add daily file goals or daily word count goals in Squibbler as well. So a couple of ways that you can use AI for research to help you as you're working on your book. Scholar GPT is one of the GPTs, and Gemini are both valuable AI resources for locating and citing material that you want to use in your book. You can request articles and books from a specific span of time. So I tested this yesterday. I asked to see all articles that have been published recently about a topic, and it gave me everything from 2024. So that's very helpful. You can also ask for the citations to be given to you in the citation style that you're using. So you can ask it to generate a list of articles for you that you can look up in APA style, MLA, Chicago. And it's really nice. It saves a lot of time, and they both Scholar and Gemini will give you a link to these resources. So then you can go and click and look at the journal article. Also, sites like Elicit, Perplexity, ResearchRabbit, and Consensus offer strong tools for finding and summarizing research on given topics. So this is really nice. They'll find a large body of resources for you, and they will summarize what the findings are from these different journal articles or these different books. So that's really helpful as well. It's a great time to be a researcher. So another way that you can use AI for research, Squibbler has a built-in tool in the Smart Writer. It's called Ask Me Anything. You can ask the AI to research opinions on a topic. You can ask it to brainstorm. You can ask it to fact check. And when you do this, the answer is going to be generated at the bottom of your page in blue, often with the source of information as well, which then you can use in your book. If it's common knowledge, it won't give you the citation source, but if it's something that needs to be cited, it will give you that source. That's really helpful. So you can also use AI for organization. Once you've collected your research and notes, Squibbler has some tools to help you stay organized, so you can integrate your research as well. The summary, notes, and research functions of the Smart Writer are going to keep your notes and citations organized and attached to the files and folders that you're working in. And I mentioned this earlier, but you can just click on the specific file or folder that you're working on, and then the summaries, notes, and research are all going to stay in that specific area, in that specific chapter that you're working on. So this is really helpful for keeping track of your resources and adding notes and summaries of your findings. It's also going to keep your work very organized. It'll be very difficult to lose your citations if you keep them attached to the chapter that you're working on. So we've come to the end of our webinar here on research, and we have reviewed some valuable resources for gathering reliable research. We've looked at some tips for conducting research, and we also looked at how to keep your research organized with AI. Thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this webinar, and best of luck on your nonfiction project.